Thank you, Honorable Heron. Honorable Sukers.
Thank you, Chair. I want to start by thanking Mr. van Loggerenberg for his courage to appear before the committee and to put his testimony before us, especially in light of your physical discomfort. I also, on the record, want to apologize to you because I was greatly disturbed by the fact that I believe we crossed the line by you having to explain your medical condition here to us and to the rest of South Africa listening in. And I want to commend you for the courage that you have to address, to speak on your medical condition and also to speak on behalf of other people that are similarly afflicted. I want to ask you only 3 questions. And the first is, if you could describe to the committee the work of the high-risk unit and why it was referred to as the high-risk unit. What was the risks? In your view, what was the value of this unit to SARS? And I note that you said that as a manager you have expressed concern for the impact on the staff of the high-risk unit. Could you reflect to this committee on the personal cost to yourself and to your staff and what it has cost you personally, financially, and the impact on your career and the rest of your team since this investigation into you and the unit, from the start of the investigation up until today? Thank you.
Thank you. Please respond, Mr. van Loggerenberg.
Thank you, Chairperson and Honourable Member. Thank you for your kind words. To describe the unit, in effect, it was intended to conduct those parts of the investigations and financial investigations and criminal investigations and audits that we were conducting, focusing on sectors within the illicit economy in our country, where ordinary auditors and investigators felt very uncomfortable in working because of the threat to life and limb, and also just fear. I recall, for instance, how the unions wanted us to begin to pay everybody danger pay and buy them bulletproof vests and bulletproof vehicles and so forth at the time, which would have been just simply not affordable. And at the same time, the demand on the South African Revenue Service to assist other law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies to address crime and organized crime increased tremendously. And so we were caught in a situation where, people planned to bomb my office, for instance, to get rid of evidence. I recall around that time how one of our investigators was shot at in his driveway, how another investigator was murdered in his driveway, killed. The fact is that as the Revenue Service over the years became more effective in addressing these hardcore organized crime types, it was not easy for them anymore to just bribe their way through or threaten their way through or so on. It escalated and the risk increased significantly. So that the benefit is obvious in that it enabled us to use a small, more precise investigative capacity to do certain things that were considered to be risky. But at the same time, it also enabled us to apply what we, from a strategy perspective, called the width, depth, and leverage strategy, which was to dedicate resources to focus on certain matters, regardless of the time it might take or regardless of the challenges. that we took. And then lastly, it was a support unit that also assisted the law enforcement agencies and intelligence agencies upon their request once it was approved. Well, the value to SARS, I think one should just reflect on sort of figures. You know, if you take into account, you're talking about a unit that comprised of 26 people in year one. By the end of year two, they were down to 7. And for the remainder of the period, there were 6 people, 6 human beings only at the Revenue Service. That led to, for example, probably the biggest the seizure of illicit tobacco in the history of all customs and tax authorities in the world to this day. One single seizure. The way in which they worked was that they were effectively, firstly, I should say they worked very much like most people worked during lockdown, and in a sense, how we are now communicating. They had hot desks initially, and they weren't necessarily required to come into the office every single day and sit there in the office. They were what was coined field workers. And the tasks that they were given were divided into 3 categories of investigations. One was to focus on sectors within the illicit economy that were identified in the strategy as high risk. Examples would be illicit drugs, abalone, CITES products, clothing, textile, and so forth. And those investigations were categorized as type A investigations, and there it was more giving us a sense of how big is this problem and where are the bad guys. A type B investigation or project was subject specific, so that was where they were investigating a specific person. In fact, in the court papers, I make reference to a mafia boss who's since been convicted, and he's serving serving time in prison. And type C project was just a quick something to help someone do something very quickly. And that was pretty much the way in which they functioned, and they functioned as a support unit for the 4 other units that I managed, which were the bigger, more equipped and more sophisticated investigative units. The impact on the staff and the cost, Chairperson and Honourable Member, I really don't have words to tell you. You know, to get a message and a phone call at midnight that a spouse has attempted to commit suicide, and the other spouse, first words to me is, I don't know whether I should contact the employer because I don't trust them. Or to walk into a household where loving 2 parents are at each other with a small child sitting in the room in the corner crying because of a newspaper article that the unit ran a brothel, and trying to make peace in that household and being confronted with the reality that why would a big newspaper say so if it wasn't true, and why would the Revenue Service keep quiet if it wasn't true? To situations where families split up completely, and the effects on those children in those families and friends. Monetary costs, I can't even begin to give you a sense. There are direct costs, of course, because it comes with legal costs and so on. But I mean, even these 3 days have cost me money. Everybody else, I imagine, who's participating in this process, I'm getting paid to do what you do. I'm not. I'm sitting here at own cost. and I have responsibilities, which is why I need to leave at 3. So I can just tell you it would be worth the while to have a look at cost of these things, perhaps in a broader sense, and not per se in this type of committee. What are the costs of people that have suffered as a result of state capture? Not just the whistleblowers, but also other individuals and their families, because the families and the children are the unheard, unknown, unthought of people. Thank you, Chairperson.